Well, I tell you what, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and kind of get started on the preliminary things because this is going to be maybe your favorite program of the year. So these are just some of my very favorite people, and they usually travel with us when we go places and all that kind of stuff. So it's pretty neat. I usually try to start off with Glenn made it. Start off with a few thoughts. And today I have been reading an article on what student leader qualities should look like. And the article I read said that there are some things that most businesses agree are important for leaders and for workers. So I'm going to just read this list and ask you to kind of think about, is this who you are? Now, we're all different in some ways, but this is the list that I read. Goal-oriented, honest, hardworking, willing to serve others, a good listener, a good communicator, a good decision maker, encouraging, positive, and responsible. So if you see some things there that you excel in, that's just wonderful. And if there may be some things you want to think about, because we're all heading, or you are, I'm kind of at the tail end of my career, and I've done a lot of things, but you're at the beginning of yours. So we're excited with what's going to happen. Okay, I'm going to try calling you out because I know there's no way you're in any order I will ever find, because I want you to meet our two professors who are here. And I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves at the end of this because they do a better job of it than I might do. And that's Professor Ashley Cruz Turner and Professor Andrew Clayton. So let's just go down, and y'all know the drill of introducing yourself. Edwin, why don't you introduce yourself to the professors, please?
Hi, my name is Edwin Rodriguez. I graduated from La Vega in 2019. This is my second year here at MCC, and I'm majoring in network administration with cybersecurity.
Jackie.
Hello, my name is Jacqueline Galvan. I graduated from Marlin High School in 2019. This is my second year at MCC, and I plan to study physical therapy.
Nayeli.
Hi, my name is Nayeli Gonzalez, sorry. I graduated from La Vega in 2018, and my major is nursing. I'm in the second semester right now.
Miguel.
Hi, my name is Miguel Barboza. I graduated from Connolly High School in 2019, and I'm in the surgical technology program.
Killian.
Hi, my name is Killian Hutchison, and I am a level 1 nursing student, so first semester. I graduated from Midway in 2019, so sort of pre-COVID times, and yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Good. Jack.
Hi, my name is Jack Ruiz Walker, and I graduated from La Vega this year, and this is my first year at MCC, and I'm planning to go into accounting.
Emily.
Hello, my name is Emily Santander. This is my second year at MCC, and I graduated from McGregor High School in 2019. I'm majoring in education, hoping to transfer to tech next fall.
Yeah. Now, some of you know these professors, so I just will point that out. Some of you travel with them, I think. Katie.
Hi, my name is Katie Michaelis. I'm a second year at MCC. Don't know where I'm going to transfer to, but I am majoring in biology, and I plan on being a PA. So, yes.
Good.
And I graduated from Midway.
Right. Glenn?
Hi, I'm Glenn Cashaw. I graduated Waco High in 2018, and I am studying cybersecurity.
Lee?
Hi, I'm Lee Matthews. I graduated Waco High back in 2017, and I plan on studying aerospace engineering and one day working with SpaceX.
Good. Audra?
Hi, I'm Audra Salmons. I was homeschooled. I graduated in 2019. I went to go into event planning, and I plan on transferring to Baylor and majoring in entrepreneurship.
Kate.
I am Cade Pledger. I graduated from Robinson in 2018. This is my third year at MCC. I'm currently studying civil engineering, and I plan to transfer to Texas A&M to study architecture.
Okay. Daniel.
Hello. My name is Daniel Miguel, and I graduated from University High School back in 2019, and I am studying digital media and professional communications, and transferring to tech, hopefully.
Yeah. Brianna.
Hi, my name is Brianna Sansom. I graduated from Valley Mills this past year, and I am studying biology and hoping to go to med school one day.
Yuli. Can't hear you.
Sorry, I forgot. Hi, my name is Yuli Lopez. I graduated from McGregor High School as a graduate of 2020, and I am planning on majoring in nursing.
Good. Daniel Carrion. I forgot we had two Daniels. Your turn, Daniel.
Okay, hi, my name is Daniel Carrion, and I graduated from University 2020, and I'm majoring in biology.
That's good. Abraham.
Hi, my name is Abraham Martinez, and I graduated from La Vega High School in 2018, and I'm currently in my second semester of the nursing school.
Good. William.
Hi, my name is William Hoekstra. I graduated from Midway High School in 2020. I plan on transferring to A&M University to get a bachelor's in construction science.
And our board chair, Mr. Holt.
K. Paul Holt. I graduated from Atlanta, Texas High School in 1972. And I need to visit with you if you're interested in construction science.
Yeah. Okay. Professors, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, great. So good to be with you guys again. Last time I was here, Cade introduced me as being a person who's been here for 20 years. And I like politics and I teach history and I love presidential elections. So it's really fun for me to be here. I am blessed with a lot of smart friends who usually just kind of tell me something right before I have to go out there and start talking. So, Andrew Clayton is definitely one of them. Andrew Clayton, Professor Clayton is one of the most astute political observers you're ever going to find. He did a thing with me the other day. We did for my midway dual credit, we put together a little presentation on the Constitution, which ended up being an hour and 20 minutes. You can only imagine, all of you midway people, especially Katie Michaelis, who've had to suffer through a Cruz Turner class. It was only half as bad this time because we had the great Andrew Clayton. But I said then, my highest compliment is Andrew Clayton as a constitutionalist. And what a pleasure that was to collaborate with him on that. It's always a great pleasure to collaborate on anything. Cade and Abraham and Glenn, anybody else, I said last time, and Nayeli, of course. We had such a great time on our trip. And when we get this trip together again, if I'm lucky enough for the president to pick me to go again, I will really enjoy seeing you guys on that. So, Professor Clayton.
Thank you, Ashley. Such kind words. And let me just say about Professor Cruz Turner, he has been a close friend and colleague and someone who I have continually learned from. There's not a day that goes by that I don't spend at least 5 minutes in his office when I'm there on campus where we talk about things, and I've learned an incredible amount from him. He is probably, without a doubt, my closest colleague, and it's always a pleasure to do activities like this with Professor Cruz Turner. And a great historian of the 19th century, but not just that, of political history of the United States. And again, I'm always put to shame when Professor Cruz Turner is the one who teaches me something that I don't know. Although I say shame only halfway seriously, because it's always just a delight to learn from him. and he's I know he's an incredible teacher, and I look forward to again these collaborative moments like this where we get to collaborate together. Yeah, just a little bit about me. I've been teaching at MCC since 2009, and it's been a blessing to be here for as long as I have been. I hope to continue to stay here and keep teaching wonderful students like you. I know that Professor Cruz Turner and I really appreciate the chance to talk to special students such as y'all, the Presidential Scholars, and I want to thank Dr. McCowan and Mr. Holt for the ability to do this. It's a great blessing that you all have, an opportunity you all have to have such a great leader with Dr. McCowan, a great mentor, and you all should count yourselves very blessed and lucky to have that. And so anyway, without further ado, I think it's back to you, Professor Cruz Turner.
Okay, and are we ready for me to share screen? Okay, well, we'll get started. So, Decision 2020. Let's see. Decision 2020, and sorry to brag, but I have voted. Anybody out there already voted? You could pipe up. Andrew Clayton, I see. President McCown, you already voted. Early voting, or did you do mail-in? Okay.
Mail-in. I did.
Mail-in. Okay.
For me, I did early voting, I think on Wednesday or Thursday of this week. I think it was on Thursday. So
I actually got there at 7 a.m. on Tuesday, which I found out to my surprise, they now open at 8 a.m. So anyway, it was good. So we're certainly in the midst of this. As from what I can tell, it's we're breaking all kinds of early voting records. So enthusiastic folks. So if you want to, let me talk about a little bit what we're going to do. We're going to go through and briefly talk about candidates, and we'll give you a little set piece on the candidate, and then Professor Clayton can lead with questions, and then we'd really like you to jump in there with questions. So Professor Clayton will be tasked with giving a tough critique on the presentation, kind of a murder board kind of thing. But we want you to jump in here with comments, questions, corrections, if you've got them. We'll do a little bit of talk about issues in a sort of similar, a little bit different format. I might ask you what the issues are, and Professor Clayton will kind of do that all together. And then Professor Clayton's going to talk about polls and debates, again, kind of same format. We'll press him on a few things, and then there won't be any corrections for you guys to make on Professor Clayton's presentation, but you might have some comments or questions. And then when we're all done, we'll have just sort of a little bit of a free-for-all. We'd just like to know what you think. This is a crazy election. It's one of the most polarizing elections ever. And so I'm guessing you guys have a lot of thoughts. And so this would be a great forum to do that. And hopefully you've got all kinds of questions. So please feel free to ask your questions. And again, if you want to just jump in at any point, unmute yourself and just say, hey, Ashley, hey, Professor Cruz Turner, hey, you, hey, that old guy with the glasses, I got a question. So just jump in there, and that's good. Nayeli, I'm expecting to have lots of questions. Like she's our warrior out there, right? I've said this many times. You've got to have somebody go talk to Judge Kavanaugh. It's always Nayeli. And then we'll put Kate in. We'll put Kate second, right next to him. Okay, so let's do this. You know what? Let's do this. Let's open up with a very brief. Let's let them talk for themselves for a second.
He took the train 4 hours every day so he could have breakfast with his boys in the morning and tuck them in at night. People in Washington didn't get why Joe Biden would travel all that way. But in neighborhoods all over this country, there's no distance parents won't go for their kids. Never underestimate the power of family or the sacrifices people will make for their children. That love and hope and determination, that's what fuels the American dream. It's why you stay up paying bills, sign up for that extra shift, worry about schools and healthcare. When Joe Biden traveled those 4 hours, he wasn't just going home for his kids. He was going to work for them too, just like he will for yours.
Are you pumped up yet?
I am here as your president to proclaim before the country and before the world, this monument will never be desecrated. These heroes will never be defaced. Their legacy will never, ever be destroyed. Their achievements will never be forgotten. And Mount Rushmore will stand forever as an eternal tribute to our forefathers and to our freedom. We are the nation that gave rise to the Wright brothers, Harry and Tubman, George Patton, the great Louis Armstrong, Elvis Presley, Ella Fitzgerald. We settled the Wild West, won 2 world wars, landed American astronauts on the moon. Centuries from now, our legacy will be the cities we built, the champions we forged, the good that we did, and the monuments we created. America's destiny is in our sights. America's heroes are embedded in our hearts. America's future is in our hands. And ladies and gentlemen, the best is yet to come.
So, as you know, we have a Republican candidate and a Democratic candidate. We've had that since 1856. Actually, the Grand Old Party goes back to 4 years before the election of Abraham Lincoln. The Democratic Party depends on who you can make Jefferson the head of it and take it all the way back to the 18th century with a good assist from Andrew Jackson. So these parties have been around for a while. Joe Biden represents the Democratic Party, and the incumbent President Trump represents the Republican Party. Let's talk about Joe Biden first. And again, I'm going to try to go through this pretty quick. Joe Biden was born on November 20th, 1942. On his next birthday, he'll be 78 years old. If elected, he will be the oldest person on day one to have ever served as president of the United States. He was born in Scranton, Pennsylvania. He moved to Delaware in 1953. Went to high school and college in Delaware. Good athlete. Some of you may know he overcame a stutter as a young person. He went to Syracuse Law School. He graduated from Syracuse Law School in 1968, married his wife in 1966, elected to the town council in Wilmington, I think it was, in 1970, and elected to the Senate, to the United States Senate, which is a big deal, in 1972. Still is the sixth youngest person ever elected to the United States Senate. He was elected in November of 72 and immediately was struck with a tragedy. His wife and their 3 children were in a tragic car wreck that killed his daughter and his wife and severely injured his two sons, who survived. Out of that tragedy, Joe Biden almost didn't serve. Was so grief-stricken and also wondered how he could take care of 2 small children on his own. He almost didn't serve. Got all kinds of calls. I think there's a call recorded from Richard Nixon encouraging him. Believe it or not, when Joe Biden was elected, Richard Nixon was president. He married a woman that I think we've all come to know, and without editorial comment, I think a lot of educators really love her. Dr. Jill Biden in 1977. He was a fixture on the Senate Judiciary Committee, very important committee. If you watch the Amy Coney Barrett hearings over the last week, that's the committee that interviews justices, and Joe Biden was chairman of that committee. I don't think anybody remembers when Clarence Thomas came to our campus, because that was a really long time ago. But he would have been the chair of the Judiciary Committee then. He was also chair of the Foreign Relations Committee for a long time. So a huge player in the Senate. Joe Biden ran for president in 1988. He ran for president in 2008. Did not win in either one of those elections. But in 2008, President Obama, who won the nomination in 2008, asked him to be the vice president. He opted not to run in 2016 under some pressure. They thought they'd give Hillary Clinton the green light. And as many of you are aware, she did not win in 2016. And so when Joe Biden had the option of running again in 2020, it seemed like the right thing for him. And the party agreed. And so he got that. He certainly got the nomination. In terms of that race, he offered a return to normalcy, basically. Return to a more civil time is something he promised. Something certainly the least radical of the people who seem to be running for the Democratic nomination, but then picked Kamala Harris, of course, as his vice presidential running mate, sort of to balance an older person with someone from the newer generation. Let me just run through a quick sort of a similar Donald Trump. Donald Trump, a New Yorker, a businessman, a celebrity, was born June 14th. 2 points on the final exam if you can tell me what national holiday is June 14th. Andrea, Professor Clayton doesn't count. Okay, June 14th, anybody? Okay, we'll let Professor Clayton answer it.
Flag Day.
Flag Day, Flag Day. I've been trying to gauge my performance here by looking at your expressions, and K. Paul's expression never changes. So I don't know how I'm doing. All right, so June 14th, Flag Day, very good. Born in 1946, Donald Trump. He is currently the oldest president ever elected. He hasn't quite, if he were to be elected again and he served out his whole term, he would finish out the oldest president ever. Right now, Ronald Reagan, when he left office, was 77. So he hasn't quite eclipsed that. 1946, that was the year John Lennon was born. That was the year Cher was born. That was the year Reggie Jackson was born. Some of you will recognize those names. It's amazing how many names were born in 46 that you guys don't know and could care less about, even beyond how little you care less about Reggie Jackson and Cher. It was also the year that George W. Bush was born and Bill Clinton was born. So we've had 3 presidents of the United States who were born in 1946. Sylvester Stallone was born in 46. Freddie Mercury, they made a movie about him. Tommy Lee Jones, Ted Bundy, also a movie. And Steven Spielberg, who made none of those movies, but he makes movies. So 46, that's like the time of our lives, like those people. Donald Trump was born in Queens, New York, and couldn't wait to move to Manhattan. He went to Fordham University, graduated with a degree in business, I think, from Wharton School of Economics. Neither one of these guys were on the honor roll when they were undergraduates. Their GPAs do not look like your GPAs, you presidential scholar GPAs. But they were good guys and they got along well. And then almost immediately, Donald Trump started marrying supermodels. He married Ivana in 1977, a Czech model. They were married a while, Don, and that produced Don Jr. and Ivanka and Eric, some of you know. And then Donald Trump married a Georgian, Marla Maples, in 1993. And then Melania, the Slovakian Melania, married in 2004. And that marriage produced Barron. he was famous. Donald Trump was famous for years for being a rich guy. And we argue about how rich, because that's part of Donald Trump's mystique, because so much of what Donald Trump does is it's always unclear. He was certainly presented himself as one of the richest people in the country. In fact, when I used to, like sometimes I would historically talking about, I'd ask who's rich. I would be talking about some historically rich guy and I say, who's the richest person in the country? And sometimes it was Bill Gates and sometimes it was Warren Buffett. I think it's Jeff Bezos now. But very often, like 10 years ago, I'd ask that question, somebody would say Donald Trump because he was such a famous rich person. But in truth, we don't know exactly how rich he is, but there's no way he's as rich as those guys. He worked as a land developer, real estate. I've got Trump Tower there, famous for having Trump Tower. Property in Palm Beach, casinos, golf courses, famous for his branding. He likes to put it. He liked to put his name on things. He was there was an old football league called the USFL. He was one of those owners. Probably he becomes the most famous one of the most famous people in the world, of course, because of The Apprentice. How many of you remember? How many of you ever watched The Apprentice? Lindsay, Killian, is that before your time? Don't remember Jack, you saw The Apprentice? 15 seasons of The Apprentice on NBC, and that is clearly what puts him in position to run for president. And he had flirted with the presidency for several runnings, but he did not. For 30 years, he kind of talks about running for president, but finally he does. So this is the wrong way to ask this question. What qualifies these men to be president, or why are they in a position to run for president? And I think probably it's fair to say Donald Trump was a celebrity businessman and ran as a business person. And then, of course, as you vote, you no longer need to judge President Trump from how much you liked him on The Apprentice, which Killian never saw. So it'd be really tough. You can judge him on how much you like him as president. And then, of course, Joe Biden, as Donald Trump likes to point out, 47 years in government. But it was those 8 years as vice president and President Obama's right-hand man that puts him in this position to run. So the slogans, Build Back Better, Biden and Harris, right? We can bring this thing back up to speed, but and we can do it even better, right? Trust Joe. MAGA, Make America Great Again, right? There was this sense that we'd gotten away from the things that worked. Donald Trump understood how things worked. Make America Great Again, and then of course 2020, a year that is so unlike any other year, that sort of goes out the window just because. Well, we can talk about that later, but that's the setup for who these people are, and lots of things we could ask questions about. So have at it. Professor Clayton, if you want to lead out, but I want you guys all to kind of jump in there and tell us what you think, and also ask any questions you might have about these guys.
So while y'all are thinking of questions, I was trying to formulate one of my own. So thinking back to the election in 2016 and just of Donald Trump in general, one thing that struck me my whole life ever since I became politically cognizant, which I would say is around the year 1992 or so, where I suddenly developed this sense of this thing that existed outside of school, my house, my home, which was American political life and the exchange between the two parties and a disagreement, maybe sometimes even a fundamental disagreement about things, but a sort of back and forth. But one thing that everyone I can remember, as far going back as I can remember, is that everyone always talked about having an outsider. This was John McCain in 2008 as the so-called maverick for the Republican Party, as the candidate for the presidency, for the White House. And Trump seems to fulfill that in some way, right? He's a total outsider. He hasn't served any time in any position in terms of in any government office. And And so I'm wondering if you could speak to sort of the satisfaction and the dissatisfaction of Professor Cruz Turner as to this outsider. Americans finally get what they want. To quote H.L. Mencken, right? The idea of democracy is the people get what they want. They get it good, they get it hard. And we got it good and we got it hard this time. And I'm wondering if you could speak toward sort of his outsiderness.
So that's great. You know, the outsider motif has always worked pretty well, usually for people running for president. I will note that, and I almost hate to say this because it sounds like a slight, Donald Trump is the second person ever in American history, second non-general to have ever not held public office and go straight to the presidency on the first try. Anybody out there know who the other person is, other than Professor Clayton? Lindsay, what are you saying? Lindsay, it scared me for a second.
I'm just repeating the word general. I don't know.
General, a lot of generals out there. Although even most of those generals had elective office. I was looking at the chat, and so I got on that thing. It said you're fired for just
That's
a second.
what Trump said. That's what Trump always said in celebrity.
Yeah, his phrase. I thought for just a second that was to me personally. Okay, that's a relief once I figured out what you were doing there. Okay, so yeah, Trump ran as the outsider. The other president to never hold public office before was Herbert Hoover. And the outsider, lots of people have run as outsiders. A lot of times when a governor runs, that's an outsider thing. And some of you may remember that Donald Trump was going to clean up the what? Jack, swamp. Did you say it? Yeah, the swamp, right? He was going to drain the swamp. So that's one thing an outsider can do. Now it's hard to run, and Professor Clayton, I'd like to hear you on this as well. It's hard to run as an outsider after 4 years as president. And so part of all of this, part of the decision you all need to make is, number one, did I want an outsider in the first place? And did the outsider do the things outsiders are supposed to do? Tame the deep state, drain the swamp, bust up kind of the conventional thinking. That's why you would want an outsider. And of course, you know, how did President Trump do on that would be one way to answer that question.
Thank you. I guess I have a response, but I'm waiting for the students to chime in here. If you all have any questions.
It is appropriate just to say, I mean, we saw those two videos. Those were designed to appeal to your emotions. It would be appropriate for you to say, hey, I really liked one of those videos, or I really hated the other video, or here's my reaction to whichever one, not the video. Here's my reaction to this person. So don't be shy.
I have a question.
Nice.
Okay, wait, let me actually unmute. Okay, so I really want to know, so say I wanted to be the Democratic candidate. What do you do? Like, is it, real Washington style? Would you support me as the Democratic candidate? Would you support me? Or do you just go to, please, I want to do it so bad. Please. So what does that process look like?
It's a great question. And we might ought to have, I'll take a shot at it and we'll let Professor Clayton. So there is a primary process. And so all the states get to vote in the primaries, and whoever gets the most votes gets to come to the nominating convention, and they win the nomination. And there's lots of rules about all that. But there is, killing your question is really good because it is something of a popularity contest. And very often, a lot of times, the eventual winner will win this before they even meet the people. That please thing, that's usually for influencers, people who can bring some votes your way. So there's a lot of groundwork, a lot of inside meetings. An example of someone that sort of busted through all of that probably in 2008 was President Obama. He was running against Hillary Clinton, and Hillary had in place all of those people, the most powerful people in the world. And President Obama just sort of busted through that with personality and charisma and oratory. And so it was a very surprising primary election in 2008. Professor Clayton, anything on that?
No, I mean, I don't have much more to add to that. I mean, Professor Cruz hit the spots here. The importance of the primaries, of course, which have become a major feature since the late 1960s in American politics. And so that really does mean having some sort of charisma or appeal to the people. And so I think both Barack Obama and Donald Trump, if I can put them in the same sentence together in some ways, they both bring something to the current moment that has some cachet, right? Has some buy-in from the American people, whatever it is. And I'm glad Professor Cruz had those two videos, because you can see the stark difference between the two candidates, right? In terms of what they're sort of aiming at, the kind of people that they are, and the kind of people that they appeal to. But in general, I'm not sure there's, all this is to say, I'm not sure that there's really a formula to put in place other than having to win the primaries. And again, the right man or woman sort of arises to the occasion and is able to speak to a coalition. And that's ultimately what it is. It's coalition building. Barack Obama was able to do that very well. Donald Trump was able to do that very well. Obviously, Joe Biden was able to do that very well in order to secure the nomination for his party. But there's no secret sauce other than simply winning primaries and making important friends. But sometimes even making important friends doesn't turn out. In 2016, Hillary Clinton is a great example. Or 2008 is a great example of that with Hillary Clinton.
Anybody else on that? So let me share this screen for just a second, one more time. So you tell me. I've got a list here. I'm going to move to the second round, sort of. Here's a list of issues. Can everybody see that? And this is the Pew Research group, and as one of the vice presidential candidates said, a very respected research group. So here's what Americans like yourself say is very important to them. Look at that, and you tell me, what are some of these issues that resonate with you?
Somebody asked me what I vote based upon, because I know a lot of people who vote solely based on abortion. And I said, I didn't think, I don't know, like I didn't say that. I think they were expecting me to. And I said, oh, I vote on healthcare and taxation. And they said, and I said,
Yeah. Well, so there are some really hot button issues, and certainly abortion is one of them. And there are certainly others. I mean, we're having this, but yeah, so when you say healthcare, what do you mean, Killian? I mean, it makes sense that you think healthcare is important, but like, what do you talk more about that?
So when I take, this is pretty personal, but when I take political compass tests, I test Democratic Socialist, and I'm like, oh, okay. But I believe that the money I make from the work that I do can do a lot of benefit. And I would like to see that benefit in the healthcare system and in people who are having a worse off time than me, to help them get back on their feet. And those are I think the issues that I've seen most affect sort of my friends when I was growing up. I saw friends whose families had healthcare problems that destroyed their financial situation. And I saw friends who their family went on food stamps and then were able to sort of regain where they wanted to be and then get off food stamps. So it's like, oh, this system can work. I have a lot of belief in the system. And I don't have a personal problem with my money being used for those things.
So universal health care. So you want everybody in the country to have health care.
I really like the Affordable Health Care Act. My family was on it for a time, was on Obamacare for a time.
Okay.
And so I don't know if I would say universal health care, but I think America could do much better from a governmental standpoint when it comes to what we contribute to healthcare.
And so by universal health care, I just mean that everybody in the country through some means would have health care. And then, so you said the other thing is taxation. So I guess your other thing is you just would really love to pay a lot of taxes?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. So healthcare is way up there. You know, this thing, the economy, who knows what the economy means? Like, I mean, everyone always says that, but it's tough. So healthcare, really, Killian, really good. 68, you're really important. Who else, anybody else spot an issue that resonates with them on this list?
I have a couple.
All right, great, Daniel.
So this is gonna be my first time voting, and so I've looked into this, and there's two things for me that really come to when it comes to when I vote, and one is race and ethnic inequality, because I think everyone should be treated equally, no matter like what type of background they come from, and also a good economy, because I believe the person leading our country should know how to handle our economy, so everyone can, United States in general can just have a good place.
Wow, another two really winners on that. That's great, Daniel. So one thing we didn't say about issues is obviously, again, we're running 2020 in the middle of a series of unthinkable events, but one of the things we're running this 2020 election is it's the year of George Floyd, of course. And so maybe race and inequality, maybe those are always issues in American politics. I think maybe they are, but as all of you first-time voters, boy, welcome to this party. I mean, it's a crazy deal. Let me get a couple other people. Daniel, that was really good. You guys are so far. If I were you guys and Killian and Daniel let off, I'd be just like, I'm not going to say anything because I'm not going to top that. But somebody get out there and be bold and give these guys a run for their money on issues.
I think gun policy is one that's definitely important just to be aware of and be thinking about not just.
I was having a little, that broke up a little bit.
Oh, people need guns.
I think we've been hacked. No.
Maybe try typing it. Type it out, and we'll read it.
How did I get off my issues? Okay. Glenn, I need you to start running my screen for me. No, just teasing. I'm fine. Okay. I did miss a lot of that, and so you guys take one last look at this. I'm gonna come off of this I'm gonna come off share so we can all look at each other again. So I did miss that was breaking up for me. The last thing we heard, did that break up for you guys? Okay. Who was that?
It's Audra.
Okay.
Audra.
Audra, are you still there?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
This is much better. Can you do that again?
Yes. So I was just saying the gun policies, and not just like because people tend to go, oh, like you don't really need like that many, like an AR-15 just to go hunting and like things like that. And it's like, it's missing the point of the Second Amendment. And so kind of really digging into that is important to me.
So you've both come up with a couple of constitutional Supreme Court ideas. Anybody watched the Supreme Court hearings this week? Okay. Audra, has anybody heard, me too. Anybody ever heard of a person named Amy Coney Barrett? Okay, we've heard of her. Anybody
I listened to her for a while, but all it sounded like was her giving non-answers or not giving her opinion on things.
Yes. And what do you think about that, Cade? What do you think about a justice not giving their opinion? It seems weird. Aren't they supposed to give opinions? Like, don't they call them Supreme Court opinions?
I think it would make a lot more sense for them to give their opinions. But I guess the precedent has already been set for them not having to or being required to give their opinions about certain topics.
Yeah. Okay, good. And what's the point of that? Why not give your opinion? Why is there that precedent?
Just because it's been done before. What was it? I'd have to watch the video again, but I remember her quoting another justice or something like that about why she didn't have to on a topic.
Yeah. Anybody else? Why might it be a good idea not to tell your opinion of Roe versus Wade or the Heller decision?
Well, because her role isn't to legislate from the bench. The Supreme Court they're supposed to interpret the Constitution.
Okay.
Their personal beliefs shouldn't matter.
Okay, their personal beliefs shouldn't matter. I think we're getting closer. I mean, that's really good. Anybody
I
else?
like to think of them as Constitution nerds. So
Okay.
she should talk about the Constitution, not about her Constitution.
Okay, it's good. Yeah, at some point if we're going to bring in a new case, I think her point was, no matter what I think, I'm going to look at this unbiased, and I want all the facts that exist in this case, whatever case comes to me, I want those to be the only facts that matter. I don't want you to have to remember some conversation I had with Mazie Hirono 5 years ago that has a bearing on the case. But anyway, I'm dominating here. Somebody else, one more person want to take a shot at talking about the issues that seem most important to you? And Professor Clayton, jump in here with your wisdom anytime you want. But one more student want to take a shot at a set of issues that are going to bear on your decision 2020.
So just really, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that Pew poll was taken, it looked like they're at the beginning of August, end of July, August. Is that correct? And so I'm just curious, it's really interesting that COVID has been, the thing that's really been driving a lot of the debates, a lot of the back and forth, a lot of the focus, the mainstream media, and yet it wasn't really mentioned. And maybe I'm confused. Oh, there it is. It's number 4 on the list. I'm completely wrong. So let me just say this. I'm surprised it's not higher, that it's the economy that is, I wonder if that doesn't obfuscate or confuse matters in that, of course, because of the COVID response, that major sectors of our economy have been shut down. And so if the two aren't sort of in some ways intermingled and mixed together, it's really hard to untangle those two things to have the economy as number one. But as you know, Professor Cruz, the economy is often number one on these lists of issues, top issues for Americans. Anyway, so
it has been said before, it's the economy, stupid.
That's right. It is the economy, stupid. That's right.
Yeah. And okay, well, let's do this. Professor Clayton, are you ready to take over? We could come back on the.
Yeah.
We can come. So remember, we got this free for all coming after your presentation. So
sure.
Even if we could have K. Paul talk about whether Josh Borderud is going to win. I mean, it's any subject is available, right? So.
Well, let me do my PowerPoint then on discussion. So my job today is to sort of talk through the presidential polls and polling in general, and just to give you a sense of the lay of the land. I mean, just really quickly here, how many of y'all have a sense that Joe Biden's winning? How many of y'all have a sense that Donald Trump is winning? What's your take on that? Just anecdotally, you've been following the news, you've been following the polls. Where do you think you are on that? Any takers? I'm going to shut down Killian right here. She's talked already. So we need Glenn talk or someone else. Nayeli maybe. Anyone? No? Okay. Well, if that's the case, what's that?
If you follow the polls, I think in a lot of places it shows that Biden is up by a few points here and there, and we also saw this happen, though, when in 2016, where it showed that Hillary was in the lead, but Donald Trump actually won the election, though.
Okay, yeah, so let's talk about this. Yeah, thanks, Kate. So just some basics, and I got to move stuff around here on my screen because I can't see what's going on. Some basics. First of all, this may be a bit pedantic, but it's worth noting that there are lots of different kinds of polls and polling methods. As I say here in my parenthetical, it's not a science, but an ever-changing art. And we're going to come back to sort of Kate's point here as we move through some of these slides. Different polls, different pollsters, different questions, different ways of phrasing the question, different ways of different emphases on who to poll. All of these are sort of built into the cake. And so it makes for a very imprecise thing, imprecise art. And So again, it's not a science, but an ever-changing art. And I really do think that it's continuing to change, and we'll talk more about that here in a bit. Of course, as you know, I'm not a statistician, and as Dr. McCowan and Professor Cruz and our chairman, Mr. Holt, know, I'm more into institutions and political philosophy, political theory. So polls are not my thing either. But it's worth knowing that every poll is a snapshot. It has a margin of error, plus or minus 3%, plus or minus 5 or 6%. So meaning that if it's a 50-50 according to the poll, that could mean as much as 52-48, depending on the margin of error, right? So again, it's very imprecise. It's worth noting, and we're going to talk about this here shortly, that there are different kinds of polls. There are national polls and there are state polls, and they do very different things, and they tell us very different things. Arguably, and I'll make this argument here a little bit, I think national polls are a lot more useless. I think Professor Cruz has heard me about national polls and the uselessness a lot in this election cycle, but even as far back as probably 2012. State polls, on the other hand, are much more interesting. Sorry, I have my 2-year-olds come to join us. What can polls tell us? Well, it seems like there's two things. It's an educated guess at a specific, it's an educated guess at a specific point in time. What do I mean? It's a snapshot, to quote Professor Cruz Turner, but at best, it's just a guess as to where the American voting population is. Now, keep in mind, in polling, they look at registered voters, they look at voters who are likely, what are called likely voters. Sometimes it's really hard to figure out who's likely to vote in an election. And remember, I was talking about this with a friend over on Facebook, a Canadian actually, who said, the polls in 2016, Kate's point, were massively off. And, the voters came out and did something else. And I just said, right, the polls don't matter, right? It's the votes that matter. So at the end of the day, the polls are helpful in sort of helping us think through what's going on in the given election. But we should perhaps have some reticence in approaching these polls and what they say. And just a last reminder, let us not forget, it is the people in the states that determine the election, not the so-called popular vote. Those who've had me in class, I don't know if anyone here's had me in class, know that I'm pretty big on, Kay, Nayeli, Glenn, Abraham, etc. That I'm big on the Electoral College, and even our chairman here, Mr. Holt, knows this. The Electoral College is very much misunderstood, and we must remember that it's not the national popular vote that determines the election, rather it's the states. So even determining or figuring out what it is that we're measuring is a considerable choice, choice is I think the best word. So let's just start at national polls at the largest level, kind of the macro level, and work our way down. I've taken almost everything I have today from Real Clear Politics. And the great thing about Real Clear Politics is it aggregates fancy statistical and political science term, meaning it puts together all these different polls. And so what you see there in that graph is that on average, Biden is leading in the national polls by almost 9%, meaning that if the election were held today, right, give or take, that we would presume that Biden would win 9% of the national popular vote. Again, the national popular vote doesn't matter per se, but there it is. I want to point out this poll over here, the Investors Business Daily poll, which was the winner of the 2016 election in terms of being closest to where the actual voter turnout and the voting, how people actually voted, how it worked in 2016. It was the most, for lack of a better way to put it, precise poll. And I want to show you this too. So this is what I mean by the different ways in which polls work, right? So you have the margin of error, which is right here. You have the percentage supporting Biden, the percentage supporting Trump. This is their sample. So each one of these numbers here, this is 1,021 people who are polled. And this is of likely voters. RV means registered voters. That means they may or may not turn out, right? All right, so what do these tell us? It tells us perhaps that Joe Biden, Vice President Joe Biden, is up by as much as 9% nationally speaking. I want to point out this too, just this nice graph here at the bottom, which shows that this has come to a little bit of a dip. And we're going to see this on all of our graphs, where Trump is, I don't want to say surging, but coming up a little bit and Biden is dropping. And this is typical of most elections where things get closer near the end towards the actual election day. As I mentioned before, the Investors Business Daily polling was the best. It was the best for the 2016 campaign, and you can see this here. So if we're going back to this, it is telling that they have Biden up by as much as 6%. Now notice that's not the lowest on this, but it's also not the highest at all, right? We have as high as 12% here from the USC poll. So national polls give us a snapshot of maybe where the population is, generally speaking, on any given election. But it doesn't, in my mind, doesn't give us a whole lot. I also want to point out this, I pulled this off, obviously, off the internet today, October 18th, that as I just said, that the race tends to tighten a lot more as election day nears or gets closer. And the best poll of 2016 is showing a tightening of the race. So even that 6% isn't exactly 6% now, it's closer to, in fact, to 5%. It's maybe because people are paying more attention. We have the debates. We have all manner of different things that are sort of entering into the equation at sort of the right time. So what really matters, I think, in terms of polling are these battleground states, the battleground states, so-called. Let me click here. So I pointed out with some blue arrows various battleground states. Florida's been a battleground state as long as I've been alive, I think. North Carolina, less so, but has become more one. Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin. These are all states that Donald Trump shockingly won in 2016. This was the so-called blue wall, which we have not heard much of in the 2020 election, which is to say they were supposed to be solidly Democratic states. Indeed, these are states that that Barack Obama easily won, especially Wisconsin and Michigan. Not so much in 2016. There's something disruptive about Donald Trump, and perhaps we can talk about that. Florida is very, bellwether. It goes every which way. I believe I have to look back at 2008 and 2012. I think Florida was won by Barack Obama one year and lost by him the next. I have to go back, and maybe Professor Cruz, you can remind me. Professor Cruz has this encyclopedic knowledge of all these things, where I'm always having to look it up on my cell phone or on the internet. So the battleground states, all this is to say, the battleground states are really what we have to look to. Again, let me remind you that it's not a national popular vote that determines the election. Rather, it is these states with the numbers on them. And of course, as Kate can tell you, who's had me for federal government, these numbers represent the number of electors for each state. So let's look at those a little bit. For right now, we have, as you see, on average, Biden is averaging within the aggregate up about 4.3% or 4.3 points within the top battleground states, of which RCP, or Real Clear Politics, lists as Florida, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and Arizona. So it looks like it's maybe still very much a Biden victory. Again, if you're looking through all these polls and looking at this map, it looks like Biden maybe has a straight, clear path to the White House. However, it is worth noting the difference here between 2020 and 2016. And let me see if I can explain this clearly enough. At that bottom here, this bottom graph, you see the distance between the percentage that Clinton had over Trump 16 days prior to the election in 2016. And she was up as much as 5 points, or on average 5 points. Let us remember that she lost the 2016 election, and primarily through the battleground states that are being looked at in the Real Clear Politics average. Joe Biden, on the other hand, is only up by 4.3 points. This should be a little bit alarming if you're a Biden supporter, in that if you see up here at the top that Donald Trump is he's skewing slightly better than where he was in 2016. So this suggests that if he's in a better spot than he was in 2016, perhaps he's doing just fine in 2020, even though if we go back to the national poll, he's losing by 9% in the general national popular vote. So those are sort of the polls as a habit. If I can just sort of summarize what we've seen, is the polls honestly do not look good for Donald J. Trump, the incumbent president of the United States, especially if you look at the national poll. It looks as though he's just getting clobbered, and that it's going to be a runaway election, what we call a landslide election in favor of Joe Biden. On the other hand, I'm suggesting to you that if you look more closely at the Battleground States and their polling, it suggests a different sort of picture, and that it may be more competitive than what you would hear in the news or what you read in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal. And that is because the polling is showing in the states that Trump is actually doing a little bit better than he was doing against Hillary Clinton back in 2016. It's worth mentioning that there are other ways to sort of measure the possibility of a person attaining that crown, the White House, that is to becoming president of the United States. One of the fun ones that's emerged over the last 5 years are the betting odds. Believe it or not, people bet on this. I guess betting is one of those things that gamblers will gamble on whatever they can gamble on. And this is one of those areas where who will win the 2020 election. I've been watching this pretty closely over the last few days. This has gone up about 10% for Donald Trump, as you can see from this over the last few days. It's pretty interesting. Trump did not look very good in the 2020 election, but this changed massively in the last couple of days going into the 2016 election. So betting odds are one way you could maybe help predict kind of where the electorate, where the people are going with their vote. This is very interesting that it's dropped so precipitously for Biden over the last couple of days and risen so much for Donald Trump. Two other sorts of sets of measurements would be the total presidential approval rating. And believe it or not, for the most part, you go back a month for Donald J. Trump, and he's not polling that far. In fact, he's a little bit ahead of where Barack Obama was in 2012. This bodes well for the president of the United States. This presidential approval rating, again, take it or leave it, whether you like him or not, it seems like his approval is where it needs to be to squeeze out a victory. The other thing is the so-called favorability ratings. So this is just a one-on-one comparison between the president here and the vice president of the United States. Who's more favorable? As you could probably imagine, Joe Biden does very well in that. Again, caveat, 2016, Hillary Clinton favored much better against Donald Trump as well. So as I was saying from the get-go here, it's really hard to predict off of polls and these other measurements who will become the next president of the United States, because it ultimately comes down to a whole host of different factors, including voters who haven't voted in a while, people who are registered voters who are really hard to poll. And perhaps Professor Cruz and I can sort of elaborate on why this is such a challenge, why the polling over the last, really over the last decade has just gotten really, really weird. It is also worth talking about the presidential debates. I'm going to stop the screen share for a little bit because this is all that's on my PowerPoint there for the end. Did anyone watch the presidential debates and the presidential debate and vice presidential debate? I guess that's all we've had so far, right? I guess we could speak just really quickly about the presidential debate. The first presidential debate was like nothing I think Professor Cruz or I or Dr. McCowan or Mr. Holt have ever seen. It was hectic. It was different. It was fast and furious. It was not very polite and political. What's interesting is to sort of compare this to our vice presidential debate, which was much more par for the course. It was very not as contentious, though there was some contention there. There was some back and forth, and it is heated, but not nearly as heated. I'm skeptical, and so let me put myself out and put my own opinion there. I'm skeptical that the debates do much to move people. Was anyone persuaded by any one of the debates, one way or the other? Just curious. See a lot
I think
of
it just enforced views more than it changed views of people.
Does anyone know someone who was like, man, I watched that presidential debate last night, and Joe Biden, he killed it, or Donald J. Trump, man, he was on fire. I'm totally going to vote for that guy now. Anyone? Know anybody? I mean, I know you're not amongst your voting population. The amount of voting that you all do at your age is of course, for many of you, this will be your first election. So maybe go ask some older people, family, friends, and your parents. What about for the vice presidential debate? Was there much there in terms of movement? Were you persuaded by Senator Harris or by Vice President Pence?
How many of you watched the VP debate?
Okay. Simmons, sorry.
And I cut somebody off. Who was going to talk?
Oh, I was just going to say that I think not many people watched the vice presidential debates in general. I think probably more did this year than they have before, just because of how old both of the presidential candidates are. There's more of a chance of the vice president being the president than in the past, but I didn't know anybody else who watched him.
I will say, to steal a line, and Professor Cruz Jr. will know this line immediately, because it's not his, but it's someone that we have heard talk on this. This doesn't seem to me to be much of a persuasion election, but a motivation election. That is to say, getting people out. It seems like people's minds are sort of made up. And did anyone watch the town halls, the competing town halls that took place this week? So this is extremely historic in that this is the first time, I think, ever, where instead of having the usual second town presidential debate is usually a town hall because of some issues between both campaigns. They agreed to disagree and to have separate competing town halls on ABC and NBC. And I turned in as much as I could to both of them. It was very bizarre, right? Very unusual to have this sort of thing where they're not talking to each other, but indeed they just have moderators, the moderator and the electorate who are asking the questions, and it was very different. I'm not sure how well that plays. I'm not sure if one is already a Biden voter, does that mean you just go to the Biden town hall debate, and if you're a Trump voter, does that mean you just go to the Trump town hall debate? And that seems like probably what happened during that this last week. But anyway, did anyone watch those though?
So I think we're probably heading, so maybe exit strategy, another 10, 12 minutes.
Okay.
Do me a favor, everybody take off their mute.
No, I'm just kidding.
So that way, if Glenn, what's up with your mute? All right. Okay, nice. So in that way, if you do feel like saying something, you won't have to worry about unmuting. So a little bit of a free-for-all. Would love to hear from you. Just a couple of questions. So be thinking about any question you'd like to ask or any opinion that you'd like to express in terms of what's important. So your sense, are your friends going to vote? You're all first-time voters almost. Are your friends voting?
My husband is not voting, and so we've had words about that.
Okay. And how many do you like? Have your friends already voted? Are they voting early voting? Are they do mail voting?
A lot of people are going to vote with their parents, which I think is a very college thing to do.
Yeah. So I went voting with my two sons, their first two votes. Did I mention that? Yeah. So that was really cool. Both veterans of our DC trip, by the way. Anyway, so that's your sense that your cohort, you're out there voting, and that there's going to be there's more interest, or you wouldn't know how to gauge it, but you feel like there's interest among your friends in this election.
Okay. I would say more among the liberal people than the conservative.
More enthusiasm, Audra? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ignorance among like our age voting. And so, I mean, I encourage people to vote, and I've got like 5 or 6 people I'm meeting to vote tomorrow. And I can tell somebody's uninformed. I'm like, I'm not gonna like tell you to make an uninformed decision.
Audra, just to make you feel better, there's a lot of ignorance in my age group as well.
It is so true, Audra. It is ubiquitous. It is all over the place. But anyway.
Let me make a point on Professor Clayton's thing. So he was telling you how I think unreliable polls in general are.
Yes.
If you really want Joe Biden to be president of the United States, you shouldn't look at those polls and say, oh, I don't need to vote. If you really want Donald Trump to be president of the United States, you shouldn't look at that polls and say, oh, it's all over. Why bother? again, it doesn't happen every time, but I've been around long enough to know that you see those polls for months, and then election night comes and it's a surprise. And so, one lesson you should always take is don't let the polls influence your voting decisions.
Yeah, maybe worth showing them that Truman, newspaper, right? Dewey defeats Truman. Polling you have to take with a grain of salt. And I don't know if I emphasize this enough. I mean, Professor Cruz has heard me on this enough. I mean, I've been saying for a long time that this is a 50-50 election, that the polls are, I'm skeptical to say the least, that it's really, really hard to figure out how to poll in this environment. You have shy voters, you have people, you have a difficulty in people. There it is. Yeah, there it is. Perfect. Dewey beats Truman.
And for those of you who don't know, that wasn't actually what happened.
Yeah, that's not what happened, right. There was no President Dewey. There's a difficulty of knowing how to poll, knowing who to poll, how to reach voters. I mean, your age group is notoriously difficult on polling. Shy voters, those who just don't want to talk to pollsters because it takes up too much of their time. Something I learned today is something called the social desirability bias, where pollsters ask sort of the wrong questions and sort of lead people into saying things they wouldn't normally say. It's a sort of way of getting things done. The length of polls, some polls take a few minutes, some polls take 30 minutes to an hour. And so it's really, really hard. You got to think about, right, who are the kind of people who are going to spend time doing that? Certainly not y'all. Y'all don't have time for that, right? I don't have time for that. I have 6 kids. And so I'm really skeptical. So to reinforce what Professor Cruz is saying here, for those who want Biden to be president, don't believe the polls. For those who want Trump to be president, don't believe the polls. They really are only so helpful, and it's not that much.
Any questions on any issues? Any questions for Mr. Holt?
I have a question.
Neely.
I mean, not per se for me, but like for other people, where do you think that most of the information they get to vote should come from?
That's a great question. So this is going to sound sort of cynical, but I think we're at a moment right now where I don't trust any of the news agencies, right? Not my conservative news agencies, not my liberal news agencies. So what I tend to do for me, and of course I have a lot of time, President McCown is generous enough to allow me several hours of the day to try to stay up on trying to be a public intellectual. But anyway, I try to listen to different reports, right? So I'll listen to NPR, and then I'll listen, to a conservative podcast, and I'll read the New York Times, but I'll also listen to the Wall Street Journal opinion poll. So I think it's one of those things where I can't say, hey, go listen to this because it's really good. But I think as Americans, you just have to get good at trying to figure out, I kind of believe this, I kind of don't believe this, or I bet this part's true, this part's not true, which is not an easy way to do it. But I think that's sort of where we are right now. Do you have something more optimistic, Professor Clayton, or?
No, it's more pessimistic than that. So a couple of things, just to start off. You all need to just know Professor Cruz Turner. Again, I spend at least 5 minutes in his office every day, and we're talking not just about personal family matters and the like, but we're talking about our students, and more times than not, we're talking about what's going on politically. And again, he's been a tremendous, just kudos to you, my friend, for being such a tremendous source of information. He'll often say, hey, you need to go listen to this, or hey, have you read this? And we're sharing this, even when we're not on campus. As Dr. McCown knows, our professional lives continue far beyond campus. But I'm much more pessimistic. I do think it's invaluable that the state of Texas has you take your government classes, and that you need to take those classes. As I tell my students every semester, you need to take this class, my class, most seriously. Because other than knowing the United States history, as Professor Cruz can tell you, The other thing you need to know is how our institutions work. And I'm shocked by how little friends and neighbors know about the United States Constitution and the way our government works. So that's one thing. So once you've done that, you're kind of halfway there. But to speak more to the particulars of it, I think Professor Krusner is exactly right. I wanted to share a place that, well, I've already shared it already, I suppose, but this is a place that I go to on a pretty regular basis, right? Which is Real Clear Politics, and it gives you all sorts of information on all manner of different things. And it's it aggregates all this information from conservatives, liberals, people who are supposed to just be telling the news. And so what you kind of have to do is piece it together yourself. If something's mentioned enough times, it's probably, well, let me put it this way. If something's brought up enough times, it may in fact be the case that it is reliable and worth listening to. But you have to cut through all of the bias and kind of check yourself at the door every single time you go in to read one of these things to say, okay, is this going to just support what I believe, or is this going to challenge what I believe? Lastly, I would just say this. I think the level of political polarization and demonization is just shocking and sad. When I went to Gonzaga University and took critical thinking, I was always taught to learn that I was taught to take my opponent's best argument and work with that. And so never assume ill will on the part of your political opposite, right? And that really helps with reading, Natalie, as well. When you're reading it, assume that they're trying to do their best. I think sometimes that's obfuscated, that they blend falsehood with truths. That just means you have to read more. So in some ways, it's harder to be a citizen of the United States in 2020 than perhaps it was in 1800, only because it's a lot harder to cut through a lot of that. And you kind of have to wade through both the good and the bad, the conservative and the liberal, etc.
And I would, you mentioned Real Clear Politics. I really do like that site. If you noticed it when Professor Clayton brought it up, there was, I think the New York Post was one thing, and then there was CNBC John Harwood.
Yeah.
So they'll very often run like back to back. Like here's the conservative story, here's the liberal story. Here's my closing idea. And it's sort of counterintuitive because I think in America, a lot of times we say, hey, let's vote the man, not the party. I think the parties are one way to do to have a shortcut. So I can't learn every person who's running and everything about every person, but maybe I can figure out, well, I seem to like Democrats better than I like Republicans, or I seem to like Republicans better than I like Democrats. So the party structure is weaker than it used to be, but I do think if you're at the very beginning of your journey trying to figure out what you believe, a lot of times if you investigate the parties and the party platforms, that's also very helpful, and that's a time-saving device, and I'm not against that at all. I kind of like that. I mean, I think most of the time the parties are pretty consistent, even more consistent than individuals. Okay.
Yes.
So we did say 6/20 was our hard out date, moment, time. Although I've been trying to bait Mr. Holt into doing something.
Yes, just sitting there. Look at him.
Yeah.
Say something.
Something.
Very good. Yeah, I got it.
I think he went to sleep when Andrew was talking.
No, I've been listening.
Very good.
Been listening.
Well, we'll hand it back over to you, President McCown.
Well, I want to thank all of y'all for being here today. Let's give a little hand for our two presenters. I'm sure that you've learned some things. This whole exercise is to get you to thinking, have a voice, be informed, and I think that's very important. Now, this semester is very different than we've ever known before, and so part of that's kind of sad, but part of it is we're getting to know each other in other ways. I am asking this semester to make sure if you have missed anything, that you work with Lindsay to find a makeup. Some of the makeups are going to be interesting to have. They may be an extra meeting with me. It may be talking to an advisor or a career coach, but we want to make sure that we have spent some time together. We know that Judge Starr is going to be talking to us in November. I think we'll probably be on Zoom this whole semester, and we'll make decisions for next semester as we get closer. We are very likely going to have another volunteer activity in November, but we'll let you know when it is, and we'll work with you if something. I know many of you are working many hours. Some of you are working too many hours. So just kind of, keep what you're doing, stay positive, because your mental health is very important. This is a time we're all going through. We're going to survive it. We're going to get through it, but study hard, persist. Don't worry about things not being perfect. Mr. Holt has sent us a message. Okay.
I want to know what kind of questions I can ask Judge Starr. I don't think all of the questions I would want to ask I could.
Well, we'll talk about that. You may not realize, but I don't know exactly how he's been involved, but I know he's been involved during this Supreme Court nominations. He said it's been keeping him very busy. When Sandra Day O'Connor was selected back in the day, many years ago, he was one of the people who was asked to go and interview her to see if she were worthy. So he's
been involved in so many interesting things.
He has, and so we'll see. I don't know. Maybe Professor Cruz Turner, are you going to be interviewing him? Is that what we decided or not?
Well, you're the boss.
Okay. Well, we'll see. We'll be talking about that. But I hope y'all are having a good semester. Just stay positive and stay working hard. I'm proud of each one of you. So we'll see you at least in, I think it's November the 15th, and we'll be in touch before then. So have a nice evening.
Thank you so much. You guys always do such a great job. So much fun.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thanks.